to use a euphemism. I'm going to read something I wrote for a benefit we had in New York in May of 1981 for El Salvador. It's called El Salvador Law. And I hope those of you whose native language is Spanish will forgive me. I don't speak the language, so I'll do the best I can. An ancient Chinese proverb says, if there is righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. When there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. I look at a picture of a shallow grave, two bodies partially visible, the legs apparently tied at the ankles with rags. At the edge of the grave kneel 3 nuns praying. There are others standing, but the photo cuts them off at the waist. They appear to be men. Only the faces of the 3 kneeling are visible. The grave holds the bodies of 3 American nuns and a lay missionary. Their names are underneath smiling photos. Sister Maura Clark, Sister Ida Ford, Sister Dorothy Kazell, and Jean Donovan. They look enthusiastic, inspired. Even in the dull, graying newspaper pictures, it is obvious that there was a purpose to their lives. They had a vision. Thousands weep for them. We know their pain is over, yet we weep for them. Perhaps the men who murdered them were just as dedicated to their purpose, their vision of their life, just as clear and meaningful to them as those they dropped in a hole in the dirt. And perhaps they look at the same picture and laugh or reaffirm the righteousness of their cause, as did their victims. But how can that be? We know they were wrong and the nuns innocent victims. We must be right. It cannot be a hitless, runless game with neither winner or loser. Sister Melinda Roper, president of the Maryknoll Sisters, and Father James P. Noonan, Superior General of the Maryknoll Fathers and Brothers, in referring to these deaths said, quote, the death of our sisters should not overshadow the murders of over 9,000 lesser-known people in that country in recent months, and the terrible suffering of countless others. As Christian missionaries and citizens of the United States, whose ties with El Salvador have now been sealed in blood, end quote. They urge the United States government to cease sending military aid to be used by the security forces. 9,000 lesser-known people, as were the 4 nuns before their murder. 9,000 lesser-known people, unknown except to family and friends, murdered by lesser-known people. 9,000 in 1 year in a country of a few million, an incredible figure, one so high as to seem unreal, and all for freedom, as was our defense of Vietnam. A defense that decimated a country, its people, and brutalized a nation of 200 million. It may take 100 years for the land in Vietnam to recover, a land now heavily fertilized with bodies in shallow graves. And how long will it take our psyches and souls to recover from the scorching received from our method of defending freedom and imposing our will on the Vietnamese, as we have all peoples who have rebelled against the dictatorships we uphold? How many more Kennedys, Kings, and Lenins, and Wallaces and Reagans? How can we continue to kill the commies for Christ without continually killing the Christ? In 1980, 9,000 lesser-known individuals were murdered in El Salvador. The Minister of Defense and Public Safety replies to letters received from people throughout the world. He enumerates: 1, the people are too emotional. 2, they are ill-informed. 3, more attention should be given to criminal acts by radical organizations. 4, The government is innocent. 5. Should we turn the government over to crazed mobs triggered by international communism? 6. The government is trying to better itself and will investigate all accusations. This eloquent defense ends with a quote from General Manuel Jose Arce. The Army will live as long as the Republic. Should he not add, and as long as we are aided by our friends and benefactors in the North? And of course, the obvious question, will the Republic live as long as the Army? Lesser knowns get up each day, wash, eat, kiss their wives or mistresses goodbye, pat their children on the head, report to the office, and earn their daily bread by systematically torturing and murdering. Today it is Alfredo's turn to attach the electrical wires to the prisoners' testicles, the wires from the little instruments sent by their friends and benefactors in the North. Tomorrow it will be Jose's turn. And perhaps they will both return after work to watch the questioning of a young woman, giving happily of their free time for the love of God and country. And after watching their Capitan play hide the trenchant, they will leave to go to a warm home and a cold beer. But I'm once again being too emotional and ill-informed. The government is innocent and investigating all accusations. Angel Erasmo Figueroa was a teacher who probably liked to eat and drink a cold beer and feel the warmth of a woman. On April 19, 1980, he survived an assassination attempt. While on the operating table, troops machine-gunned him as Army and National Guard troops surrounded the hospital. Was he then resisting arrest? Was he then, this teacher, Angel Erasmo Figueroa, part of a crazed mob? Or was he a villainous instigator? The government is innocent. And the campesinos, the men, women, and children who have been hacked and shot and dumped in shallow graves, are they the radical organizations we should give more attention to? The knowns and lesser knowns put in their regular working day. Some grow food and coffee. Some wash automobiles. Some weave cloth and others make clothes. And some torture and kill other knowns and lesser knowns. Quote, the death of our sisters should not overshadow the murders of over 9,000 lesser known people in that country in recent months, and the terrible suffering of countless others, end quote. 9,000 tortured, mutilated bodies, some dumped in shallow graves, and made possible by us. And because there are still those overly emotional, ill-informed, such as the Archbishop of San Salvador, quote, who shall always condemn every violation of human dignity, no matter by whom such violation is carried out, end quote. We shall now send millions more in armaments and increase the junta's ability to pursue its dedication to defending their form of liberty with torture, murder, and shallow graves. Those in the shallow graves, known and lesser knowns, have families who mourn them, painfully aware that they will no longer be coming home at day's end. They love them. And those who put them there, the known and lesser knowns, have families who love them just as dearly and wait for them at day's end with just as much affection. Who do they hate? What image tortures the minds of the families of those in the shallow graves and those who dug them? Is it really a hitless, runless game? Is there really no winner and no loser? Can 9,000 people be murdered in 1 year without somebody losing? Who do you hate? Shall I look at the picture of the partially concealed bodies of American nuns, with 3 of the nuns kneeling prayerfully at the edge of the shallow grave, and hate the miembros de la Junta Revolucionaria de Guerrero? Shall I think of the mutilated bodies of women and children and want to spit in the face of Colonel Jose Guillermo Garcia? Shall I think of the campesinos who are now nurturing the soil of their land with their rotting bodies, shove the face of Colonel Carlos Angio Vitus Casanova into the rotting flesh as I scream at him, "You, you, you!" Or should I think of the body counts that are now going on and let my blood boil with hate and ask Secretary Haig if he has an up-to-date printout? After all, Alexander, you can't tell the lesser-knowns from the lesser-knowns without a printout. Or do I think of the executive order that would allow more sophisticated little instruments of torture to be shipped to our fellow deficient firepower and higher body count? And those who approve and implement the order with as much moral concern as that given the purchase of a bag of jelly beans? Or do I spume forth my hate upon the entire military-industrial complex who cannot abide peace? Who do I hate, and why? Oh, dear God, tell me who to hate, and then convince me that it is just. Breathe within my heart the conviction that it is right to hate, that it is right to hate those who torture and mutilate and murder and dump 9,000 lesser-knowns into shallow graves. Fill my heart with the assurance that this will solve the problem and stop the killing. It is easy for me to hate, but impossible for me to live with it. I cannot hate the murderers, the torturers, the mutilators, and those who make it possible for them to continue without destroying myself and ultimately everything I believe in. If I truly believe it is wrong for them to kill, then I cannot hate them. If I believe such things are brutal, then I cannot brutalize myself by hating those who brutalize others. No, miembros de la Junta Revolucionaria de Cubanero. No, Colonel Garcia and Colonel Casanova. No, esteemed Secretary of State. No, Mr. President. No, I will not play your game. I will not allow you to force me to hate. Hate comes much too easy for me. I can slide into hate instantly when I think of shallow graves. To hate is simple, but it is difficult for me to love. I can just sit and hate, and hate and hate. But love demands action. An action that does not come easy to me, but one I will take no matter how much hate may try to drag me into a shallow grave. No, I will not allow you to make me hate, for in fact, no one can make me hate. It is my decision to make, and I choose love. Hate is a problem I have lived with and died with, and so has the world. I have lived with the poison of hate long enough. I no longer choose to live in the problem. It may be the problem of the junta. It may be the problem of our president, but they cannot drag me into their fear and hate. I choose to live in the answer, and the answer is love. And so I will love you, esteemed miembros de la Junta Revolucionaria de Cubanero. I will not defend my right to live, or anyone else's, with hate. I will love life, and so I will love the oppressors as well as the oppressed. I will love the prisoners and their tormentors. I will love the tortured and the torturers, the murdered and the murderers. For if the oppressed are my brothers, so then are the oppressors. And if I do not love both equally, then I love neither one. Either we are all one or nothing. Nothing. My blood boils as I see the Guardia Nacional hacking a campesina as she tries to scream away the danger to the child she clutches. The laughter of the soldier ringing through her head as she dies. Her child splattered with her blood and bits of bone. The child's hands locked in her mother's hair. Her screams almost inaudible with terror. The mother's body twitching spastically as blood spurts in the air. The child's screams seeming to continue as its head is almost completely severed from its body. the soldiers, compañeros, congratulating him on his fine work before they turn and continue the chase of the campesinos. The body count already starting. It's just a small scene, not uncommon, and has been seen many times and will continue to be seen. And my head screams as my blood boils with rage, and my body fills with tears, and all of my being wants to lash out with righteous rage and kill the beast, pursue it, trap it, then pull it limb from limb, and destroy it for now and always, but I cannot allow that. I must not allow it, because then I will be La Bestia, the beast. I must fight my instincts and realize in all my being that I must love the hand that hacks as well as the campesina and her child, or I will be doing the hacking. I must love the lesser-known murderers who buried the bodies as well as the 9,000 lesser-knowns in shallow graves. I am either a part of the problem or a part of the answer, a living part of the answer. El Salvador amor. Love is the Savior. I thought I'd read a couple of pages from a book I'm working on now. I think the name of the book, what the hell's the name? Seeds of Fear, Seeds of Love. And this is a few pages from it called Tears. He recalled the way his father felt before the tears came. Or was it his eyes? No, it were the same. It was the only way he could see his father, the only way he could force the image through the confused labyrinth of his mind and stay above the tears that surrounded him. That from time to time swelled and flowed over him like a child rolling in the surf, the sun bright, hot, sky clear, occasional clouds hanging from flat blue, ebb tide waves folding softly on the sandbar 100 yards from shore, the resulting movement so gentle it never did reach the shore. The bobbing, screeching body of the child creating the movement of the water as he splashed and rolled and pretended. Pretended what? Yeah, what about a pearl diver going down really deep and getting caught in a giant clam and almost drowned, but gets out and gets to the top of the water just before he can't breathe. And he just gets to shore before he gets really tired, like after a shipwreck. And he floats all night after days in a lifeboat or a raft, and it gets sunk, and he hasn't had any water or food, and he gets to the beach and can only let the water push him on the beach, and he passes out, and you see the palm trees and all the water forever and ever, all the way out, and the little waves go splat, splat, and little bitty crabs go crawling around, and sometimes little bits of things float on top of the water and get pushed up on the beach, and sometimes they go out again, but sometimes stay and the little shells scratch, but sometimes a bigger piece of water comes and pushes you right down, and it comes right up to your chin. But sometimes somebody has to come and pull him up on the beach, like some natives maybe, and maybe his eyes feel like salty water and burn. Yeah, that's what happens. Your eyes burn and you have to cry. And perhaps his father felt like the little boy bobbing on the water, ever so gently being pushed here, then there, in time to be somewhere, at least for a while, a time of gentle slackness as the moon decides whether or not to reverse the motion of the water, always deciding that the ocean must seek itself again on the shore, and so the gentle currents gradually, perhaps imperceptibly, become waves, their motion and power growing stronger and stronger, more irresistible and implacable, immovable in the movement, and the boy must walk away from it before he gets relentlessly beaten by the impersonal and inexorable movement of the water. So he rises from the water like a miniature Leviathan, standing tentatively on broken shelves, stepping carefully, gingerly from the surf to the beach, standing at the edge of the water to see how long it takes for the water to reach his feet, and then cover them. But how long is long, and how long will I watch me back away from long past and ago waves that splashed gently and rolled and roared childish ears, breaking thunderously and foaming on the beach, spray flying, eyes stinging from spray and sun reflected from sand and sea. Maybe the tip of his nose getting burned, needing something put on it. And could that be how his father felt before the tears came? And why is it he could only feel his father when was unable to recall what it was he looked like? Why did his face roll and fade and almost disappear, but then come back but never stay still and let him see? And what are the color of his eyes? Jesus Christ, why can't I remember the color of his eyes? And maybe the shape of his ears. Oh, for Christ's sake, who gives a shit about the shape of his goddamn ears? I guess I do. It's his shape. It has something to do with him. Anyway, I can feel him, sometimes almost smell him too. But I can feel him and know the shape of his ears and know I can't describe them for Christ's sake, but so what? And all I can remember are the little bumps on the back of his neck. Pigtails, he called them. Little bitty things. But I can't seem to remember how he felt before the tears came. If I could, it might be I could remember why they came. Was there an occasion? Perhaps a spanking, a punishment, a bawling out? Did he feel? Jesus, of course he did. Take away the screaming, the puffed cheeks, bursting veins and sweat, even the shape of the ears, and there's only him and all those jumbled feelings. Jumbled? Were they? How in the hell do I know? But it must be, of course. I must know how my father felt before the tears came. And why couldn't they be his tears as well as mine? Of course they can. Are children the only ones to cry, even to sleep? Maybe he went walking at night, even on the beach, and got wet even and cried. It's different at night, crying. In summer, at night, there's a breeze and it smells good, clean, different than anywhere else. The water sounds different too, more distant. Even when you're standing in it and water and sand are rolling around your toes and ankles, just like in the day, it's different. And it's cool and you can keep your eyes open and look. Look to where sky and water meet and imagine all sorts of things. And maybe he did too. Maybe when my head was pushed into the pillow and I hugged it around my head and only heard and felt my breath swallowing me, my cheeks stiff with dried tears, he walked along a beach somewhere. Or sat by a window and looked at rooftops and pieces of sky and thought, or maybe even dreamed, yes, dreamed of a beach and taking off his shoes and rolling up his pants and walking along the shore. Along the hard, water-beaten sand that changes colors as the water rolls back to itself, even at night, and thought something, or maybe even cried. And perhaps, just maybe, he cried as the boys sobbed. And it could be that there was a music from the tears and sobbing, but they couldn't hear it. Their own tears too loud in their eyes and too distant from the other to hear the song, feeling only the sadness. Could that be how his father felt before the tears came? Is it only distance? But how far have we come? And how far have we yet to travel? Oh, Jesus, how lost is the boy and the man, the son and the father and the son. Oh, shit. I would like to hear that song. If only once I'd like to hear that song. Or would I run from it? Have I already run from it, leaving it far behind? What a joke. Never. If I'm going to recall how my father felt, the song will be just beyond reach, a half note beyond our shapeless ears. reading this when my son's around. This is his favorite story. In 1978, the American Federation of Teachers put out a special TV supplement to their regular publication, and I was asked to write something about television. I don't have a TV set, by the way, which makes me an expert on television. Why not? I'm an expert in everything else. And this is called A Little Respect. To him, little. Harry pushed the papers on his desk into piles, any old pile, and rushed to the elevator. He hated those last-minute phone calls. He never could figure out why people waited until 5 to 5 to call. He hurried to the elevator looking at his watch. He could still make the 5:20 if there were no more hang-ups. The first two elevators went right past his floor because they were filled, and he groaned inwardly as the others waiting complained. He kept looking at his watch, but it didn't seem to do any good, so he lit a cigarette, and an elevator stopped, and the doors opened. He squeezed himself in, and the elevator went directly to the ground floor, non-stop. He rushed to the subway and stood on the platform, constantly looking at his watch, complaining loudly to himself about the service, and what in the hell is keeping the train, wishing he could light a cigarette. The more he looked at his watch, the more convinced he became that he would miss the 5:20 and end up on the damn 5:30, the cattle car. Eventually, the train arrived, and he pushed and was pushed into the car. He was jammed so close to the guy in front of him that the guy's mustache kept tickling Harry's nose. And whoever it was behind him must have had spaghetti and meatballs for lunch with extra garlic. He wondered what time it was. Everybody flooded out of the train when they reached the terminal, and Harry rushed, from time to time almost running, toward the proper track. He glanced at his watch and the clocks on the wall and knew it was hopeless. It was already 5:21, and it would take him at least a few more minutes to get there, no matter how fast he walked, and God knows that if they ever left on time, they would today. When he got there early, never. But today, the end of the train was just barely visible when he got to the track. He looked at the dark tunnel for a moment, feeling and listening to his heart pound. He bought a paper and waited. A cattle car. That's what the 5:30 is, a cattle car. And not only that, the 5:30 doesn't know what a schedule is, not even a nodding acquaintance. Who knows what time I'll get home? When he reached his station, he almost stopped for a moment to breathe the air, but instead continued to the bus stop, sneaking a few looks at his watch. The bus was there in a matter of minutes, and thank God he got a seat. He read about a flood, a hatchet murder, an earthquake that killed 10,000 people, and relaxed. The short walk to the house was almost pleasant. He looked forward to sitting and relaxing for a few minutes, if possible, before dinner. The street was relatively quiet, quiet enough to be able to hear the birds. Harry liked to hear the birds. It was so bucolic, like the city was a million miles away. Nice. He opened the door of his home and was immediately assaulted by the sound of machine guns, cannons, and the screams of planes. His 10-year-old son, Milton, was sitting on the floor in the living room, surrounded by a few empty bowls and numerous candy wrappers. There were crumbs of crackers, popcorn, and potato chips everywhere. Harry stuck his head in the doorway. "Hi, Milty, how are you?" Milton stared at the screen. Harry looked at him for a moment and raised his voice slightly. "I said hello, how are you?" Milton stared at the screen. Harry stared at his son, but could not outlast him. "Turn it down, Milty." Milton stared at the screen. "Milty, I said to turn it down. It's too loud." Harry's head was raging, but he just stood over his son, squeezing his newspaper, raising his voice just a little each time he spoke. His son continued to stare at the screen. Finally, there was a commercial break, and Harry tried again. "Milton, lower the volume." Milton finally acknowledged his father's presence, by giving him his best Bonzi posture without getting up. Be cool, huh? I'll be cool, grabbing for the control unit, and Milton holding tight with both hands. Give me that, you! Look out, you joke! You want to break it? I'll break your head, you little... Harry's wife, Maya, yelled from the kitchen. Is that you, Harry? He stood up. Yes, it's me. The movie suddenly came back on with an artillery barrage that caused Harry to drop the control unit. He retreated to the kitchen. Milton stared at the screen. Maya was turning back the aluminum foil on the TV dinners. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. A special treat. Yeah? Your favorite, Salisbury steak. Harry nodded. With homemade water? What? Nothing. What was all that noise? Were you yelling at Milty again? Yelling? How could you tell? I heard you. How could you hear me over that racket? Maya, I tell you, something's got to be done. Done? About what? About what? About Milty. Why? What did he do now? What did he do? That's it. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't say hello. He doesn't say goodbye. He doesn't say anything. He just sits in front of the television like a blob. He likes it, Harry. And anyway, it keeps him out of trouble. I'm his father. You should say hello. Is that something terrible, to want your son, your only child, thank God, to say hello? I work all day. I work hard, like a slave. Maya was nodding her head and continued to nod as she put the dinners back in the oven, Harry following her around the kitchen. Like a slave to give my family a nice house in the suburbs so you don't have to live in the crowded city. Am I asking for trumpets and kettle drums when I come home? Am I asking for a bugle call? All I'm asking for is a little consideration, that's all. Is it asking so much to have him say hello? I always say hello. You say hello, but does he? Maybe I should get a tape recorder and have him say once, only once, hello, Dad, and then you'll play it when I come home. Maya shrugged. Excuse me, Harry, I want to set the table. Maya set the table and Harry continued to follow her around. I'm going to make some changes around here. I'm going to get some respect from my son. Do you hear? I hear you, Harry, and you're right. You should get some respect. Excuse me while I get the silverware. From now on, when I get home, he's to turn that thing off and say hello. Maya nodded. How was your day? My day? My day? The days I survive very well. It's the nights that aren't so good. The timer started ringing and Maya took the dinners from the oven. Tell Milty it's time to eat. Harry went into the living room, grim determination stealing his resolve. Come to dinner, Milton. Bring it here. What do you mean, bring it here? Milton slowly turned his head and looked at his father as if he were an imbecile, then turned back to the screen. Harry stared at his son for a moment, then spun around and went back to the kitchen. He won't come to dinner. He isn't hungry? He wants to be served in there. Maya shrugged. Let him eat in there. I'll fix a tray. So what do you mean, Harry? Don't get so excited. It's bad for your digestion. Here, sit and relax. Maya pushed Harry into his seat, then quickly fixed the tray for Milton and took it to him. She came back and served the food and sat and smiled at Harry. Come on, Harry. Eat while it's hot. Harry was continually shaking his head. Bring it here. Bring it here. All the cannons and machine guns in the movie seemed to be exploding in his head. Through the trauma of the cannonading, he heard his son's voice, and Maya got up and cut a big piece of pie and put a big scoop of ice cream on it and took it to Milton. Harry was eating. He could feel the food. He chewed. He swallowed. He must be eating. Maya sat down. He could see her, but somehow she wasn't there. Wasn't. Thoughts stabbed his head. They broke through his skull, pierced his nose and ears. They spewed forth from his mouth and wrapped themselves around his head and squeezed at his throat. Some respect. You can say hello. I'm your father. I work all day at 5:30 the cattle train for what? A broadside of guns and planes. A little respect. I don't have to listen. There'll be changes. Harry, you're all right? Yes, some changes, and then some respect without the bombs. Harry stood up, tall and straight and stiff. Maya looked up at him as she continued eating. Right now we'll start with the changes. And he strode forth from the kitchen, Maya frowning, and into the living room, past the blob of Milton sitting, staring, and yanked the TV cord from the plug and started wheeling the set out of the room. Milton stared at the dark screen for a moment, then yelled, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Doing? I'm making some changes." "Hey, Ma! Ma!" Maya rushed to the living room. "What's wrong?" Milton was yanking at his father's arm, hitting him, tugging at the set and yelling, "No, no, give me the set." "Be careful, I don't give you what you deserve." "What's going on?" "Harry, what?" "Out of my way. Out!" He pushed his son aside, and Maya automatically stepped aside as Harry pushed the set out the front door and dumped it on the lawn. Maya and Milton watched as he went to the garage. "From now on, there'll be changes. Ha ha ha. I'll get a hello." He came out of the garage with a can of gasoline and an axe. He continued laughing hysterically and screaming as he attacked the set with the axe, the tube exploding and huge hunks of glass going everywhere. Harry getting a few cuts on his hands that started bleeding. Maya and Milton screaming, Milton yanking on his mother's arm, "Stop him! Stop him!" and then ran into the house, still screeching, and called the police. A few neighbors peeked out of their windows and then came out to watch Harry chop up the TV set, laughing and laughing, little splotches of blood swinging from his hands as he chopped. Then more neighbors came out of their homes as phone calls were made to spread the news. And they came closer and closer until almost 100 people were lined up on the sidewalk and street, watching Harry as he finally stopped chopping and poured the gasoline over the shattered set and tossed the match in it, and the fire started out. Poof! "Burn, that bastard! Burn, burn, burn!" And he started jumping up and down, and Milton started to run toward the fire, and Maya held him back, and a couple of neighbors' children screamed, "Put it out! Put it out!" And their parents started chanting, "Burn, burn, burn, burn." And then more of the neighbors started applauding and coming closer to the fire, cheering Harry as he continued chanting, "Burn, you bastard, burn, you bastard." And a siren was heard in the distance and got louder and louder. And before the cops got to Harry and Maya, the fire engine came screeching around the corner, and 2 firemen came running over with an extinguisher. As one cop was asking Maya what was going on, and Milton jumped up and down screaming, "Kill him, kill him!" and suddenly ran into the house and got his video camera. And the other cop was trying to drag Harry away from the fire, and he kept shaking the cop off, yelling, "Leave me alone, you have no right, burn, you bastard, now he'll say hello." And the cop dragged him harder and harder, and Harry resisted stronger and stronger. And finally the cop had it. "You better take it easy, buddy, or I'll break your head open." And then called his partner, and they grabbed Harry, twisted his arms as he flailed and jumped and screamed, and the 3 of them rolled on the lawn. The firemen telling him to look out and get out of the way as the neighbors applauded Harry and booed the cops. And the firemen and cops had torn almost all the clothes off Harry and finally got him face down on the lawn, Harry bruised and bleeding. And one had his nightstick pressed hard against the back of Harry's neck as the other one cupped his hands behind his back. And Milton was busy filming the scene on his tape machine. And Maya stood quietly watching as the cops dragged Harry, still laughing hysterically, to the patrol car. And the firemen spread the ashes and made certain the fire was out before leaving. Milton spent the night with his grandparents when his mother visited Harry. He hooked his tape machine to their TV set and watched the cops drag his father away, smiling and shaking his fist at the screen, "Kill him, kill him, kill him," then played the tape over and over and over.